All right, welcome back, everyone. I have a return guest on, Berenger Greer from the Georgia market. And Berenger reached out because he wanted to touch base with my audience and kind of remind them about the powers of house hacking and how, you know, there's many ways to invest in the real estate market. And right now, times are a little more challenging. Prices are high, interest rate is high, insurance, property taxes are going up. So he wants to discuss about what he's seeing that's going to work well in his market and how he's navigating these challenging times and maybe things that you can look for in your market. So welcome back, Berenger.
Houses are it's really hard to find deals in the real estate market right now, unless you're gonna just have all the cash you need. You can bleed a little bit on cash flow and you can wait for that appreciation to hit. I think some of those people may come out on top, but it's going to be a very, very long game for them compared to other investments that you could be making with the same amount of capital at the moment. But the way that I found to really make deals work in this market is just being creative and converting. Typically, I deal with basements that already have a bathroom in it because bathrooms can be kind of expensive, 10 to 15K to make. And there's plenty of houses, especially in Georgia, that have basements with these bathrooms. So we'll find it. Usually two rooms, convert one of the rooms into a kitchen and living area, and one of the rooms just has a one bed, one bath. So that way you find it typically it's going to be a 3-2 up top with a 1-1 in the basement. If 3-2s market rents are going for 2,000, you lease it out 1,900 a month with utilities included. So the effective rent there for someone is going to be much cheaper than going into their own single family or own apartment because they're already saving that extra 250 to 350 a month on utilities, and they're getting the same amount of space. Only caveat, they have to live with a neighbor in the same house, even though it's really like an apartment duplex situation where you never see the people. You might hear from them, but that's what you get from any multifamily living scenario. But this way, you take a house that leases for 2,000, you lease it out as a 3-2 up top for 1,900. You're not making the 2,000, you're actually only making 1,600 off of it. But then you can lease that 1-1 for the same rate as any 1-1 apartment in the area. And it's going to be cheaper because the utilities are included. So 1-1 in the area is going for 1,300, 1,350. You lease it out for that 1,300. You get a renter in there. You're making 1,000 off that, 1,600 off the top. So what you were going to get 2,000 for, you're now making 2,600 for. And then when it comes to procuring another loan, since you are getting the market rent of 1,900 and 1,300, about 32, 3,300, your debt to income ratio is golden. They're not going to take into account that you're paying the utilities on it. Some lenders may, but it's not going to be a very large point. So your debt to income is there. You're making more money on your rental. And if you're a millennial who have the hardest time getting into the housing market right now, just savings is at an all-time low, costs are at an all-time high, you're able to really fully mitigate your mortgage. If you're a guy like me who, well, I'm not single, I have a fiance that lives with me, but you're okay with living in a 500 square foot space to save money, you can buy a house, 3-2 up top, 1-1 on the bottom, turn it into a kitchenette, costs about 12,000. You don't even need all the appliances. You don't need all the cabinetry. 90% of meals that come out of my fiance and I's kitchen is made in an Instant Pot. So all we really need is an outlet to hook it into, and we can cook 90% of our meals there. When we need an oven, we use an air fryer. Anyways, it's just a great way to get into the market and actually get someone to nearly completely pay off your mortgage. What we're doing now is buying a $260,000 house, 2-2 up top, 1-1 in the basement. I already have roommates lined up that are willing to lease out 1-1 for me for about $1,200, $1,300. I'm covering the utilities. They're getting into Metro Atlanta, where they're really not going to be able to get in for any cheaper than that. So it's a great deal. And our mortgage on that place is going to be around 17, 1,800 bucks, and then we're really effectively paying $500 a month to live. And what is that? That's going to be with the national average or nationally advised 30% housing budget in an individual's finances. We're living at like 5% of that. So then all that money just goes straight to savings for more deals. Even if you're not necessarily a saver, the financial lifestyle doesn't really appeal to you, which I know we forget 90% of Americans are not hyper focused on these things like we are. It's still a way for you to get a house, start building equity. You have something saving and you can keep a roommate in there. So you're making money. If you ever feel like moving, you can just lease out that top unit and start being positive, probably three, four, $500 a month. But I think it's an effective way to own real estate as a millennial, as someone who isn't necessarily an investor that can put 20% down on a property and be able to get back into the real estate game before it keeps on going up and up because I don't think these prices are going down. So that's really the whole spiel I have. Buy a house, make a duplex out of it, put a kitchen in the basement, start leasing it out. If you get a good roommate, it's like they're never even there, and you're able to enjoy home ownership, get the tax breaks, and have a great asset for the rest of your life that you're paying less than you would anywhere else for rent.
So how does this differ, or would you say this is just a form of house hacking?
It's 100% a form of house hacking. Now, house hacking, I really don't even understand what it means anymore because back when I started, it meant buying a house with a 5% conventional loan, living in it yourself, moving out and doing it again every year. But with the sense of house hacking, like a duplex style, this is 100% house hacking in that sense.
So you're saying, is there anything like new to like you're saying this strategy that you're implementing in your market that you're seeing is working really well? Is there something um maybe that others haven't caught on yet? Like you're talking about like house hacking is pretty big right now, and people are trying
Yeah.
to look for these certain units that fit this certain niche or amount of rooms, amount of space. So is there something in Atlanta or Georgia you're saying that permit wise or whatnot, you have to look for certain things?
Really? No. I can't speak for all of Georgia, Cobb and Cherokee County. I've done it over 50 times over the past 5 years. So no permit wise. You do need to be careful about where you install the kitchenette. They do have a thing about windows. It's best to get a code enforcement in here to check everything out, just to be on the safe side. But it's completely allowed. One thing you can't do is build an ADU around these areas. They only allow one dwelling unit per parcel of land in Cobb County, which is one of the geographically largest counties in Georgia. It's also one of the biggest suburbs touched in Metro Atlanta, probably the biggest suburb. But ADUs, man, that's just way too much cash into making a little extra income. So I don't ever advise anyone do that unless you're just in Hawaii and you're gonna have Airbnb guests every single day of the year.
Well, that's kind of against rules, right? Airbnb is getting banned in a lot of places, so you can't do something like that unless it's like 30-day stays, right? So
Mhm.
that's been a wrinkle in a lot of people's investment strategies. But so for you, like you're saying, is it are you helping investors find these properties to get on the property ladder, or are you helping more from the owner's side, and they bringing you these properties, and you're like, hey, you know what, you could collect more, or we can get more rent for this if we do these configurations on these properties that you have?
My role being in pretty much every physical aspect of investment from property management to sales to doing investments and off-market deals, everything but the lending side does allow for me to be flexible with that. So when I'm working with new investors, I definitely kind of pivot them towards this if they're looking for cash flow. Then if I get a call from somebody wanting me to a landlord wanting me to help them with their portfolio, I definitely give them these ideas as well, walk them through the process, take them through it step by step, and make it so they start increasing their cash flow. But it's really just advice for anybody. Good market, bad market. I still think this is one of the better ways to lease out real estate.
So I think you mentioned, you said you've probably done this maybe about 50 times now, or is that kind of accurate? Or
Um, well, if we're being realistic, I would say about 20 to 25. Sorry, I was just talking.
no, no, no. I mean, but that's still a lot of people you've helped. But how many people do you think you get pushback from? Like if you suggest these kind of strategies and whatnot, what is the pushback from a lot of people?
People think it's complicated. They think it's going to be a lot more complicated than it really is. You can convert an entire place to a duplex in as little as 6 hours. Just get someone in there to run a gas line, depending on where the doors are, you should already be fine. Gas line, laundry hookup in the upstairs typically. Laundry's typically in the basement on split level homes in Georgia. So add a laundry upstairs, gas line for a stove in the basement, and then get a water line for the sink, and then install it all. It's a 6 to 12 hour job, usually done in one weekend, and you're good to go. Costs about $8,000 for it all, and you can do it as little as like 2,500, depending on what you put down there.
Yeah, it sounds a lot like this guy Derek Sherrill. He's a resigned firefighter. He's in like the San Francisco or California area, but that's his niche, like ADUs, and he has that down to a science. So I mean,
Mhm.
this is probably a great niche for you to get into. Like you're even talking about you have to have code enforcement, certain regulations. You got to be aware of certain things. So I mean, I think if you make this like your niche, I mean, I think that could go a long way for you. Do you find a lot of homes in your market that fit these criteria where it is possible to do these things?
Yeah, there's a surplus of them, really. And for whatever reason, they seem to not be selling very quick, which I can't hit that nail on the head. Why not? But they definitely sit around, and I'd say any given day we have about 2 to 3 options to choose from, which in this slow market is actually really nice. I don't think I can find 2 to 3 just single family deals on the market every day. So yeah.
Yeah. So now we're talking about house hacking and forms of house hacking, and maybe to us it seems very mainstream or common, but I think like if you talk to just everyday people looking for a home, a lot of them that's a very uncommon term for them. So I
Mhm.
think a lot of it too is I felt the same way. It kind of like when you buy a home, um, having roommates or having sharing the unit, it's kind of like you haven't made it yet. So I don't know if that's the right way to put it, but I always felt like, when you get your home, it's your home and you're going to be by yourself. And that was kind of part of that American dream, like where you've reached, right? And I think we have to get people to start changing their viewpoint on that and realizing that this house hacking or, like you're saying, find ways to lower your living expense or even generate a little bit of income on your property. And that's going to put you well ahead for retirement and even just being financially free.
Yeah, I mean, the American dream, there are a whole lot of people who feel like they deserve to have houses on their own, and I'm not one to get into that ethos of any of that and tell you what you do or don't deserve. But I found that by 27 being moderately successful for my age, I've definitely had to make sacrifices, think outside the box. Of course, I want to live in the city in a big high rise and have the beautiful view every night, walk around to whatever restaurant I want. But my fiance and I have realized we need to live in a converted townhome that is made into 3 units, have living expenses for only $950 a month, save up all that money. So in 10 years, when we do have the kids and we do want the big house, we're going to be able to have it. And you know what? After you do it for a month and you move in and you're like, no dishwasher, I have a super small stove, it's going to suck. After a month, you don't even realize it and you're living just fine. So that is something I'd like to help people kind of understand a little bit more just because you can't have it right now. It's probably best to just cut your costs a little bit, do what you have to do in the short term. So when it comes down to the long term, you're going to be in a much better space for success. So this is another reason why I'm kind of passionate on telling people about this. I'm not reinventing the wheel. I am in no way claiming to even bring this to light. I just want to bring awareness to your podcast to some people, maybe jog their memory on it so they can put it back to the forefront. But if you are someone who values their privacy, you don't want to live with random people in a rent by room scenario, you don't want to buy a duplex because duplexes really don't cash flow anywhere in Atlanta right now. They just don't. They're sold at such a low cap rate that it doesn't make any sense. This is an option for you. You can have your peace and quiet, you have your equity, you're in it for a lower payment, and you start living a more financially independent lifestyle. So all we're doing here, Mark, is adding tools to the tool belt for potential investors out there.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, you haven't, you're not reinventing the wheel, but you're just finding which wheel or which tool fits into your market or toolbox, right? Like what you're saying, right? So it's kind of that, so even like Hawaii, like you touched on Hawaii, Airbnb was working well for a lot of people at one point, right? That was their strategy, because of regulations and whatnot. That has put a wrinkle into some people's plans, and they got to pivot and they got to find what else can work in their market. And I think that's the important part from what you're talking about is you haven't reinvented anything. It's just a matter of you found something that's working in your market, and that's a great thing. And I think that's what everyone has to do a better job of. A lot of times we find the reasons not to do certain things, like there's obstacles in front of us. But there's a lot of ways to get around it. And I don't know if you follow. There's an investor in Maui, and Maui has their own challenges, also a different island.
Mm.
But like you touched on it, ADUs and whatnot. So Hawaii, there's a huge backlog of permitting. It takes forever to get these things
Yeah,
passed.
tell me
And
about
she's found a way temporarily to basically order these homes off of Amazon.
wow.
Those prefab homes, and they're up in, I think, 30 or 60 days, I believe. And she's cash flowing on these, and they're not they're basically on still or whatever. So they're not an actual structure. So she's found a way temporarily to get around all these permitting issues. Now we'll see how long it lasts before the government gets their hand involved. But for now, she's figured out a way to make use of land that she has available, instead of having to get these permitting ADU process. Then same thing though, right? You got to figure out a way that and what's going to work in your market. So
And that's
yeah.
a lady to listen to because she obviously has a little bit of insight into the future. And if I had to guess, before permitting does catch up, she's going to have them all sold for a much higher price than what she got them for.
Exactly, right? I mean, same thing, there's still people making money on Airbnb. It is definitely more challenging in a lot of markets, but there's those that got in and they've got their systems in place and they're still making it work. But just like anything, right? When it's too easy or when everyone's doing it, that's when you got to be wary, right? When everyone starts jumping in the Airbnb game, or maybe what you're doing, when you start seeing too many of these start hitting the market, then now you might be like, okay, now if there's too many people doing it, then maybe people are thinking it's too easy, and that's when you got to be a little bit cautious. Maybe they're overpaying for things or they're cutting corners here and there.
That's when the
But
price starts going down, or
yeah,
people just have a general distaste to it and
yeah,
it becomes too stigmatized. Because that's what happened with Airbnb. Everyone started doing it.
yeah.
They all started milking it for every single penny they could get. And I haven't stayed in an Airbnb in probably 5, 6 years because of that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm glad people stay there for my clients, but yeah, like you're saying, I mean, a lot of the hotels, but same things. It forced the hotels to pivot and realize that if they don't make any changes, right, Airbnb is going to take a lot of their market share. So a lot of the hotels have to pivot and accommodate these people that want these certain types of living conditions, where it's maybe more like a home where there's full kitchens and whatnot. So that's what a lot of the apart or hotels in Hawaii have done. They've built floors out that are more like this Airbnb style for
Really?
families. Yeah, so a lot of the hotels, same thing. They're in the Airbnb game where they have units that are kind of for this Airbnb short-term rental market. So same thing. It forced them to pivot though.
So with Airbnb in Hawaii, I mean, like I lied. I stayed in one Airbnb last summer because I went to the beach in Florida with some buddies who insisted on an Airbnb, and we were half in the bill, so it made sense as we were traveling in a group. Sorry, man, I tell little white lies just in conversation a little too often on this stuff. But
Man, you're
anyway,
making realtors look bad, man.
I know now they all know that we're legally allowed to puff our words. But anyways, with that being said, like Hawaii, I figured Hawaii would be the perfect place for vacation rentals because there were vacation rentals privately owned long before Airbnb came around. So what's the difference between people owning a condo that they visit once a year for vacation and leasing it out in the meantime versus actually having an Airbnb?
Well, before we get too deep into it, I mean, I guess maybe a couple of the easiest ways to approach it is, definitely the hotel industry has big pockets. So, too many short-term rentals affect, their cash flow. So they're a big part play in why a lot of these Airbnbs are getting banned or whatnot.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the other side to it is, you touched on it. Not so people that do own maybe vacation homes and whatnot, not all of them do put it on as a short-term rental. So there's a lot of vacant properties in Hawaii where people it's their second home or vacation home, like you're saying, and some of them either they don't maybe need to rent it out, or maybe they just do it with family and friends. So there's actually a lot of vacant units that are occupied, well, vacant but are owned by someone that doesn't live here. So
Yeah.
that's kind of an issue where a lot of people are like, Hawaii is already limited on housing, and now we have a lot of these homes that are technically vacant and people are just letting them sit there, and they're not you know being rented out long term or short term, right? So that's another issue, so there's a lot of, and another thing too is, so they're trying to pass and this is not completely related to short term rentals, but they're trying to pass a bill to ban all foreign investors. So that's something that they're trying to pass to help with housing. But
Going on a lot of places.
yeah, but Hawaii's one, and the challenge is that it's so broad. It's basically ban all foreign investors, where like Florida has this certain bill, but it's more specific to where you can't be buying agricultural land, or you can't be buying land close to like military establishments or
Mm.
beachfront property. So there is restrictions on that bill, where the Hawaii one is very broad and it's kind of just like no foreign investors. And now you start getting into who is considered a foreign investor. Is it someone that doesn't live here? They are, and now we're getting into the Constitution and whatnot. What's unconstitutional? So that's the big issue with that. But what people don't realize is that foreign investors actually make up a very small percentage of single family homes that are being purchased yearly. So even if we did limit that or eliminate foreign investors, there's still so much pent up demand from people that want to buy homes here, local residents, that the supply is still not going to increase very much. And you're still going to have all this pent up demand. So prices are not going to come down very much, if they do at all, that people are hoping for. And you're just going to have that same amount of supply and demand imbalance there. So that's something that it sounds great, right, to ban these investors, but at the same time, it's not going to really probably affect the supply and demand side to where prices are going to crash.
Yeah, even then, I mean, in Georgia, we had BlackRock buy up 60% of real estate over the years 2020, 2021 on market. People were like, oh, wow, BlackRock owns half the real estate in my neighborhood. And it's like, no, they don't. They bought up 60% of only 2 years
Yeah.
for the entire time real estate's existed. And they
Yeah.
have even stopped buying now. So statistics can be very confusing to people. And I do see what you're saying. That's kind of the current sentiment of the market to me right now. Everyone's hoping that prices are going to go back to where they were back in 2019, but the dollar has inflated. We might see a slide if people stop buying because of these high interest rates. But if you're thinking that there's just going to be some great gift from the sky that's going to make housing prices all of a sudden the same price it was back 5 years ago, I think you're going to be sorely disappointed. Or if that time does come, I think we're going to have much bigger fish to fry than buying a house.
Yeah. I think a lot of it too is a lot of people don't realize that housing is very unique. It's not like stocks where, most people that buy a home, yes, there's a lot of investors out there buying a home, but most people are buying a home for a lifestyle decision or a lifestyle reason. They're not looking at it as an investment. They're buying it because this is the neighborhood they want to live in, or this
Yeah.
is this is close to where they work, or this is what the school district they want to be in. So a lot of people are buying homes for lifestyle reasons. They're not buying it because they're looking at, okay, this is going to appreciate 10% in the next 5 years, right? So that's the one thing, right? Homes are always going to sell, and there's always going to be a demand for it. And until someone can come along and figure out the supply side and how to increase the amount of homes being built, but at the same time, builders are not going to do that because that's just going to cut into their profit margin if they start over supplying the market, right? So the builders aren't dumb. They're going to provide enough homes to reach their profit margin, right? So it's the same thing, right? So housing is always going to be sticky. There's always going to be a challenge there. And like you're saying, it's if it makes sense for you and you can get in the market now, you probably should just try and get in now and if you can do what, like you say, what you're doing, figure out a way to make these homes somewhat cash flow or even reduce your living expense, that's the best way to do it now. Get in now, let that equity build up, let someone else help you pay down that mortgage. And then now that's just one building block on your way to the financial freedom, right?
It is tough though, and this is just a question that kind of come up in my mind. But are we kind of out of touch? Because I mean, if millennials are having struggles even getting down payments, and I'm sitting here, get your down payment and add an extra 12K. Like, do you think that's viable for fix helping these millennials that are sitting on the sideline afford houses? Or do you think it's kind of like we spent a little too long in our investment echo chamber and it might not work for the general population?
Well, you know, I think a lot of people's I like you said, I think a lot of people's American dream vision has changed. But and I don't have the study with me and I don't know an exact number, but I believe like if the millennials are doing a lot better than like the what is it, Gen X or boomers at this
Yeah.
point, right? At this their age or whatnot, or home ownership. So they're actually doing really well. So no matter what you see on TikTok and Instagram and all these millennials complaining about how hard it is,
Yeah.
I mean, I get it. It is, things are more expensive. It is a lot more challenging, but the numbers show that there's a lot of millennials that are doing a lot better than it seems. And I think and of course too, the numbers can be skewed or lied a little bit, but based on the numbers, the millennials are doing well. But I think it's just a lot of it just comes down to getting educated or changing that mindset about it, right? And I think for me, a lot of it too, like we touched on, right, as far as like that American dream, right? And I fell for that, right? Getting the bigger home and thinking that this is it, I've made it, I'm going to stay in this home for 30 years and whatnot. And I look back on it and said, man, I don't need this size of a home or whatnot. And shit, I could live in a box if I really needed to.
That's
That
what
whole
I'm
me,
saying.
right? Yeah.
It's not the worst thing once you realize that life below your means isn't bad. And plus, my fiance and I mean, we enjoy life. We entertain ourselves quite a bit. It's a lot better not having to pay $2,500 for rent for a two-bed around Atlanta, saving that extra 1,500 a month. I mean, you can use that on vacations 3 times a year, whatever you want to do, if that's what you're looking for. But lowering costs can be scary when you first start thinking about it, but once you get used to it, once you make that jump, you realize it's not that big of a deal at all. The one thing I would like is a dishwasher, but when you're only two people in the house, get your dishes clean, it's just an extra 5 minutes a day. But that is definitely not worth me spending an extra $1,000, $1,500 a month just to have that nice little privilege, I guess you can call it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even that's what I mean. I have a dishwasher and I don't even actually, honestly, I don't know when the last time I used it. Like you
Oh,
say,
really?
well, yeah, because it's like I only use so many dishes at one time, so it's kind of like, is it does it make sense to put stuff in my dishwasher and then I got to pile all the dishes in there? And then it's like now when it's done, I got all these dishes to put away, or is it just better, more efficient to just do the dishes that I use at the time and then now, put them away and then I have less. I don't know. Yes, I haven't really thought about it too much, but it's
That's
like,
what I'm saying. You can already save an extra 200 a month. Just get rid of
yeah,
your dishwasher and downsize to something that doesn't have one. Boom.
yeah,
And that's how
no,
I live a fire lifestyle.
exactly, yeah. Well, yeah, man, I'm glad you reached out. I know you're doing great things over there, and I like I said, so before we wrap things up though, so like if an investor, reached out to you,
Mhm.
so for your market. Do you think that like these type of properties that you're talking about and discussing, like someone can still cash flow on them with the rates they're at, or more somewhat, and so they're not going to be living there. Like let's say an out-of-state investor was to find a property like this that you're mentioning. Is it a good chance that it might hit that 1% rule, that the rent to price ratio, or they, yeah?
100%. Uh, so $300,000 home price. Let's do 325 just to be technical. just going off a Google mortgage calculator, is total monthly payment of about $2,300. And of course, we want to do CapEx, maintenance costs, budget for that, whatever your personal numbers are for that. Personally, all my cash flow, I think all cash flow should be considered insurance for your property and should be put in some sort of savings account or long-term brokerage account where you're making money off of it, and just don't even use it as income. Just keep on saving it up if you're able to. But anyways, 2320 total monthly payment on a $325,000 home, 20% down. $325,000 home on average in Georgia will rent for about 2,000, 2,100 on its own. It's probably about a 3.2, 4.3. And if you can take that and turn it into a 3.2, 1.1, you're looking at on average 3,200. So we just hit the 1% rule. You're looking at 32, 3,300, and your total monthly payment, 2,320, you're making cash flow. And some cases, the one hard part about it is hard to get ARV for these things because we're at an in-law suite, and what we need is comparable properties to use to justify the price of ours. So it's hard to say the ARV. I like to say the in-law suite's at about 10 to 15K, but I've seen scenarios where you would be in a neighborhood of townhomes all selling for about 280K, and then see a townhome with these apartments built into it or an apartment built into the basement sell for 30 to 40K higher. Now it's anecdotal, so it's not what I go around advising my clients. I tell my clients that actually might not add much to the ARV because I'd rather be safe than sorry and not get their expectations up. But that's the one issue I have with it, is finding the true ARV for it. But other than that, cash flow 1% rule just about every single time.
Awesome. So, any of my audience that wants to look for a new market or whatnot, or get something that hits that 1% rule, I recommend reaching out to Berenger and maybe setting up a call with him, and you can see if something works for you.
Yeah, we're actually featured agents on Bigger Pockets. One Source Real Estate, brokered by Matt Nicklin. He's the one who puts out many of Bigger Pockets Atlanta update newsletters. So we're very good with investments. It's all we do. It's One Source Real Estate. If you ever need anything, you can either find us on Bigger Pockets or shoot us an email, Berenger@onesourcere.com.
All right, man. I love it, man. Yeah. So we'll do this again. We'll follow up. Maybe hopefully some people can reach out to you and we can see how it goes.
Cool. Well, Mark, I really do appreciate your time. I was excited to get on and talk about it, and thanks for giving me a platform to speak about it
All
on.
right, man. Yeah. Anytime. Thanks, man.
Yep. Have a good one.
You
Bye.
too. Bye.